Hello and welcome to your final assignment. I am trying to record this probably for about the fifth time for you, so I'm really going to maybe try to fly through this because I want to make sure you guys get this information. All right, so what you are creating is one assessment. You can create two assessments. My preference, if it was me, would be one assessment for both assessment 1 and 2. So the test plan and the general consideration. Name your test. What are you going to name it? Geography, geometry, geometry 3. Test over Mesopotamia. Just give it a name. The purpose, the intended use of the test. The test is a summative test. It's so I can know what people are doing at the end of the second trimester or the first semester. You need to say where this test happens, when it happens, so that you can really know, where it's supposed to be in the area of the curriculum and time for a child's age and where it is in your school's scope and sequence. Description of the characteristics of the person whom the test is intended. So, is this third grade first semester, third grade second semester? Believe me, there's a huge difference between first and second semester. So, really describe who takes this test. If you're teaching at the secondary level, is this a test that maybe sophomores take? But maybe you have a few juniors and seniors. And if you have juniors and seniors taking the test, is it because they did not pass it the first time? Explain that. Tell me, who is this test intended for? The content description. This is over ancient Mesopotamia. When in ancient Mesopotamia? There's a lot of ancient Mesopotamia. So tell me a time. Tell me exactly how I'm going to know this is what I need to study, or this is what it's about. The description of the learning condition, the instruction, the prerequisite knowledge, which the proposed examinee should have experienced. So maybe you're teaching a concept that is built upon from the year before. So in their freshman year, they learned this, and in their sophomore year, they learned this with you. Tell me how that builds upon each other. And then the test specifications. For each objective in the test specification, specify the associated item numbers. You are probably going to have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 test objectives, and maybe you have 20 questions. So one objective is going to be talked about more than once. So it might be question 1, 3, and 5 cover objective 1. Show me how they align. You can do that in a chart. You can do that written. I don't care. Just show me how they align. Description of how the test specification was developed. Sources, persons consulted. Maybe you have a grade level team. Maybe you have a subject level team. Maybe you have somebody who's your curriculum director. Maybe you have a principal. Talk about the process. How are things developed in your school or where you're at so that you can develop a test. Statement justifying the particular objectives and number of items shown on the test specification. So, why did you pick 25 items? Was it so that you could adequately cover what the content you needed to cover? Estimate the amount of time the examinees need to complete the test and describe how the test was determined. Think about this. I know the manual thing is scaring a lot of people, but you want to be able to give this test in District A, just like I could give it in the next district over, because you're not going to be there to describe it to the other teacher. You need to tell them what they need, a 30-minute block of time that's uninterrupted. They also might not be able to let them leave to go to the bathroom. It's all in one sitting. No calculators, only pencils. Whatever it is you need for this test, it needs to be written down, because you're not going to be there to help another person give your test. Think about it that way. Make sure it's so completely understandable that anybody could give your test. And then the preliminary version of the test. Describe how the items were developed, going through that process. Was it a team? Was it you giving it to another colleague and they looked over them? How are the alternatives were chosen for multiple choice items? Are they viable items that could actually be chosen, or are they so out in left field that nobody's going to pick them? Name the people who have edited the items. So who have you used? Please, you can use each other. You can use your colleagues. I do not want you to think that you are alone on your island. I want you to use each other, because in education, we have got to be a team or we're going to fall apart. Make sure that you talk to at least one other person and get their feedback. Describe the nature of any revisions that were made from this step, and then try out a version of the test. I repeat, listen to this information. Do not give this test to anybody under the age of 18. If you do, you are going to have to go before the IRB board, and you are going to have parent permission to do that. Do not give this test to anybody under the age of 18. So, preliminary procedures. How is the sample obtained? Now, this is going to be a little bit not true because you are not going to be giving it to students, but how would it normally be obtained? Describe the preliminary test administration procedures or any special problems that encountered. So, how, did you have to move the seats around? Think about those kind of things. Also, as I think about, I gave the MAP test to third graders. It was perfectly fine to give the MAP test to third graders, except in April, instead of being 70, it was 90 in my classroom and I had no air conditioning. So that could definitely affect my test scores and has nothing to do with my children's ability. Those kind of things do need to be noted. Describe the data collection process. How are you going to do that? Are you going to grade each student's test one at a time? Are you going to go through and grade one item at a time? So you grade test 1 and you grade the first item, test 2 the first item, test 3 the first item. Think about how you want to grade so that you are looking at it as objectively as possible. Then item revision, item analysis, and item selection. So think about the data and look at each one. So say item 1, 15 people got it right, but the 5 who got it wrong picked exactly the same answer. That's a red flag, and that might tell you that you need to either reteach something or that maybe your distractor is too close. You need to look at that item and then understand why they picked what they picked. Describe the general plan you used to select the final 20 items that go on your test. Now, some of you are like, I thought I could have 10 questions. I thought I could have 20 questions. You can have as many questions as you want, but you can have 10 questions and get 2 answers. So you might have a fill in the blank that has 2 answers, but it's only 1 question. So try not to be so concrete. Think outside the box. You can have 20 items and only 10 questions. Think about, how you can measure what you need to measure. So revise the item on a final form, describe the match between the items between the first item and the original test, and tell why you changed it, if you did change it, and the reasoning for that. Okay, the mean, the standard deviation, the reliability were things that we just discussed yesterday in the last presentation. Look over that. You can watch that if you have questions on that one. The standard error measurement, please look at page 80, figure 4.5. Once you know your reliability coefficient, which we talked about using Excel to find yesterday, you can see where your standard error measurement falls with your standard deviation. So a normal distribution, most of the scores are clustered in the middle. This is a bell curve. The midpoint of the curve is the mean. The curve is divided into 8 equal sections called standard deviation, or as you can see, that's the notation for standard deviation. Describe how test scores are derived around the mean. So this is a normal distribution curve. As you can see, the top one is like one that we would have for like an IQ test. Anybody who scores between an 85 and 115 on an IQ test would be what we would consider average, because 68% of the people fall in that area. That's why when children score lower in IQ, they can sometimes get service, or they can have some get services where special ed is concerned, or maybe they score normal on IQ, but they're performing at like a 70, which would be a standard deviation below where they were supposed to. As you can see, numbers really mean nothing, because on the bottom one, a 500 is the median. So, you're really just looking where that score falls on normal distribution. What I want you to do for yours is to make a bell curve like this for your students. So where's the median score? You should know what that is. Or the mean score. You're going to be able to find that and make that number in the middle. And then you can draw and plot this. Please don't think you have to make this electronically. You can draw it. It can be a picture that's in your paper. But just to see where your scores fall for this exam. Here it is again. Here's a general normed reference test, the GRE. Some of you might have taken it before. But as you can see, this is a great test. Look how many people have taken it. 1.3 million people. This is a great test. If you look at some of the exam manuals at some of the tests you might be given, you might be kind of alarmed to see that it hasn't been given to many people. As you can see on verbal reasoning, the mean is a 462 with a standard deviation of 119. So, 119 plus or minus that 462, quantitative would be an average. Quantitative reasoning, 584 is the mean with 151 the standard deviation. So that's plus or minus that on 584. As you can see, for analytical writing, a 4.9 or a 3.1 would still be average. The final version of your test. I want a final copy. I want the test with the answer sheet. Characteristics of the final version. I want to know about the sample. Well, how many people were in it? Of course, this is fictitious, but about administering it. Compare the groups in the state of target population. Tell me about your group. Males, females. Are there children with special needs? Remember not to use identifying characteristics. Frequency distribution of the test scores and obtained percentile norms. That's what we were just talking about. The mean, the standard deviation, the standard error of measurement. Describe the validity of the test and the intended purpose. So, did it do what it was supposed to do? Prepare a student profile chart. That is what we talked about yesterday in the Excel chart. We're going to look at that again here in just a second. Summarize and discuss the characteristics of the final version. Tell me about what it looks like. It can be a paragraph or two. This is in that summary statement. Tell me what you've learned. Maybe I learned I need to go over the tests I make to see if I'm actually making good tests, and I need to rewrite those questions. Were there problems you encountered that you never even thought about? Insights. This is one page. It doesn't need to be a dissertation. And of course, APA. Remember, you are in a graduate program, and we do have certain standards. All right. Content of the chart. This can be all in one submission, or you can submit this in assignment too. I don't care as long as I get it. So the MOPTA, this is for people who are in here for initial certification, but some of you are not, and you're wondering why you have to do it. This is also a DESE standard, and in the state of Missouri, we are all have to answer to DESE. So it's good that you know it and that you have the language so that when you submit things to DESE, you are using the right things for your school district. All right, you need to have a pre and post test score for at least 10 students. You don't have to do 20 students. I'd recommend it. It'll give you more information. A baseline data, that's where they are going to be in. That would be a pre-test. The pre and post test must include data that was given to show when the instruction took place. So, November 1st, I gave the pre-test. December 1st, I gave the post-test. The chart should also include the ceiling score, so 100% or could be 500. Just tell me what the top score is. You will need to write 2 or 3 paragraphs on the performance of the class as a whole. Are there modifications that should be implemented to the entire class? Did they understand or maybe not understand an objective? Again, looking at your test items, did they get it right? You will also analyze the positive and negative change in a student's progress. Hopefully they do positive change where they get better scores from the pre-test to the post-test, but sometimes we negatively can do that as well. They can actually unlearn things. Any student who needs individual attention in the area deficit should be noted in several paragraphs of writing. I would definitely recommend that you have a couple of students that need some attention and what you would do for them. All right, so here is a student 1 through 20, and we have a pre-test and post-test. As you can see, I've done the same things that I did yesterday on the other presentation that I put up for you, but you're looking at the scores from the pre-test to the post-test and their mean, standard deviation, the correlation. As you can see, these two tests do not correlate well. I have a 0.4. Remember, 0.8 or above is a good correlation. Also, I'm also going to look to see did I positively or negatively affect, and I would go through and say, I have 15 students that I positively did better on their scores, and then maybe a few that did not do well on their scores, and maybe why. Because sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm teaching. It could be something else, and it might be, well, a student who went down like number 17, he was at a 34, went to a 29. Those are definitely low scores, but maybe his parents are getting a divorce right now, and he is cognitively not able to do a lot of the things that we're expecting him to do in this grade. So those kind of explanations. Think about, I just want you to make the best assessment you possibly can. Please don't try to make this hard. Make it something that you can use. If you've got questions, I would love to talk to you, but I hope this presentation kind of helps you through the process. And if you've got more questions, let me know. Thanks.